All right, welcome to tonight's meeting. And colleagues and superintendent, as you know, the first order of business is to call into session and then to approve the agenda. And so item 2.1 is the approval of the agenda. You have the agenda in front of you, and so I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And that takes us to a series of public hearings that we will conduct for each item on this agenda regarding the school district's financial matters. And so item 3.1 is the required local effort millage rate presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Is there anyone here to speak to this item this evening?
Let me announce the number to go with it.
Okay,
Yep.
do that first, all right.
The required local effort millage, including prior period adjustment, is 3.1310 mils.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Now, is there anyone here that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Evanchek. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.2, basic discretionary operating millage rate of .7480 mils presented by Ms. Perry. Mr. McInnes?
The basic discretionary millage, .7480 mils.
Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Excuse me,
Need a
let's take it
motion?
back. Need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms.
I'll second
Gardner,
it.
second by Ms. Evanchek. Now, is there any further discussion at the dais? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.3, capital outlay millage rate. Mr. McInnes?
The capital outlay millage rate is 1.5000 mils.
Is there anyone here to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by
I'll
Mr.
second
Bryant, second by Ms. Evanchek. Any discussion here? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.4, total millage levy, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
The total millage levy is 5.3790 mils.
Is there anyone here to discuss this item tonight? All right, seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Gardner,
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Evanchek. Any discussion?
I don't have any discussion, but I would like Ms. Perry to speak to what we're seeing here about the downward trajectory over the last 30 years, please, just for the information of the public.
I do have a small presentation if you want to see it.
I'd be glad to see it if you want to do that, but I think this is important for the public to see how it's been going down.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The superintendent and I have been working on this budget. This is the budget he's recommending. It's balanced. And I had some overview slides, if you would like to see them, Dr. White, if,
Well, since you've prepared them, I wasn't anticipating this, but that'll be fine.
that way you
Go
can,
ahead.
I wanted to be able to show you what the millage is doing. So this year, for 24-25, 3.131. It was 3.229. When I spoke to you earlier, it looked like they were going to raise the required local effort, but they actually did lower it by .098 mils.
And you're talking
They as in the state. The state
Okay.
tells us by we are required to collect the required local effort. If we didn't, we would forego $147.5 million for this school year.
Well, then this is a significant change because if I remember,
Mhm.
I think you said they had increased it by .002.
Yeah, I think it was it was going to be about 3.3 something. So they did drop it back.
So this is a change.
Yeah, the other one was projected. This is the actual.
De facto is what
And
they've
this is
given
why
us.
it's because I didn't get this number until July 19th. That's why I wasn't able to advertise it in time to be able to adopt July 22nd.
Well, since you're presenting that, then does that, that increases our budget, is that right?
No, sir.
Ah,
No.
That's decreased.
It just changed, what it does is basically the state is saying they're gonna put more in, and we're gonna collect a little bit less than they originally thought, but the overall total is the same.
so it's a wash.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
But for the taxpayer, it is lower. Now, the required local effort in 1995-96 was 6.530. So you can see that it has decreased drastically. There have been little bumps along the way, but overall, it's been a downward projection. And we know the next part of our operating millage is the discretionary operating millage, the .748, which when we advertise, we have to advertise that we are proposing this solely at the school board's request. But the state is expecting everyone to do this. It's in the FEFP.
And real quick, Ms. Perry,
sir.
if we chose not to vote for that, then how would that affect the school board, our school district?
We would be down about $18 million. Capital outlay and maintenance, 1.5 mils. The state only provides about $1 million for capital. The 1.5 mils is a way for us to be able to get the money that we need just for barely doing maintenance. The half-cent sales tax
Mm-hmm.
helps us to be able to do these other projects and to be able to do things right.
So that, the 1.500 mils, that is on the property taxes.
Yes, sir.
And that-
And that is also, it's discretionary, so, I mean, we are saying that the school board chooses to levy this, but if you didn't, we wouldn't have any money for.
Right.
for
And the
capital.
1.500 mils, that's set by the state, is that correct?
That is the max we're allowed to
Okay.
levy.
Okay.
And if we didn't levy it, we wouldn't have money for capital, other than sales.
So the
tax.
state does the 1 mil?
The state does the required local effort. Then they say we're allowed to do .748, and we're allowed to do 1.5.
Okay,
But we have to say you're choosing to do this.
right, okay.
But like I said, all 67 counties do this.
And that's what I was going to say. When you look at the .748, you look at the 1.5, and then you look at the required local effort, which all of them are generated from the state.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard what Mrs. Perry just said. I don't think you're going to find another district in the state of Florida out of the 67 that's not going to levy the state mill, so to speak, or the required local effort. This is how we're funded as a school district, and we do not go above any of these state-generated mills or the required local effort.
Because we could vote to go above that, could we?
Yeah, it would have to be voter approved.
By the
Right.
public,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
we don't, okay.
So as you can see, that's the 5.379 that you voted on earlier, compared to a total of 5.477 last year.
Mhm. So it's down from
Yes,
last year.
ma'am. This talks about what a mill is, but I think that we already know that. And I just wanted to let you know that, remember, we talked about before that I had to advertise last Friday that we were proposing a tax increase. And that wasn't because the millage went up. That was because property values went up.
And just as a reminder on this language, when Mrs. Perry puts out as an advertisement that it's an increase, a tax increase, and that's generated by state law language.
Yes, sir.
So just explain that.
If the amount that we expect to collect is more than the amount we expected to collect last year, we have to say we're proposing a tax increase.
So even though they
yes.
didn't change any of the millage rates,
Well, we actually lowered the millage rates.
even though they went down,
Yes,
but
sir.
because property values went up,
Yes.
we generate more dollars.
Yes.
So therefore, they dictate the language of an increase.
Yes, sir. That's exactly it. And then we have to do an ad about the tax for the school capital outlay. The 1.5 mil is expected to generate about 45.5 million, which sounds like a lot, but it can go very quickly because everything is extremely expensive when it comes to school maintenance. The budget summary ad is showing that we increased by 2.6% on our budget. And so this is, you can see the general fund and all of the various funds to get the total of the 2.6% increase. I don't include the COP in that, because the COP, if I did, that would skew things. That's a one-time source of money. It just comes in one time. We are then just spending the money down. So I'm not to include that by statute. And I also do not include the internal service fund, which is our self-insured medical. So when you see that ad, that's where the 2.6% came from. And you can see that my general fund increased to 3.2 million, 3.25. New revenue, 11.35 million. Other financing sources, the transfer from capital improvement funds actually is going up 3.96 million. 2 million of that is to help pay for bus driver salaries and benefits. That will be a total of 4 million coming from capital. Then we're expecting increases in some of the seat management costs, because we're hoping that the new RFP will include the iPads there, and then that would be paid for with capital. Now, the fund balance went down 12 million, but we planned for that. We had used at the end of 22-23, we used some of that ESSER money when the government was thinking about pulling it back. We got approval to move salaries into ESSER. We pulled that back in order to use that in 23-24 for ESSER purposes. So we expect it to be down the 12 million. We had an extra 12 at the beginning of the year. So that 4.8 million that we have to meet class size, I'm showing that we have FTE reserves. That'll take us down 3.71. Increased funding to charter schools. Fortunately, we did not have an increase to our retirement contributions. Property insurance went up a little bit, so that's going to decrease our money. But we had that reduction of self-insured medical contributions. It's going to be about 3 million total, but about 2.8 to the general fund, because remember, we have some federal and we have food service. And the additional capital transfer of 2 million shows us right about $4 million increase, like we thought it was going to be earlier when we met. And that's what I have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Perry.
Okay.
No,
So help me review, Mr. McInnes. We have a motion on the table, is that correct?
The last
Has there
item
been-
was approval of 3.5, the resolution.
Right. So we have a motion on the table because I believe Ms.
Yes,
Vanchek
that's
raised a
correct.
question, and that wasn't during public discussion. So we actually have the motion. So is there any further discussion? All right, there being no further discussion, and since there was no other input, I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.6, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget, General Funds for the year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the Superintendent. Mr. McInnes.
Yes, sir. Item 3.6 is the preliminary and tentative budget general fund. That amount is $409,778,605.11.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here to speak to this item tonight? All right, seeing none, need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms.
I'll second
Gardner,
it.
second by Ms. Vanchek. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, could we revisit item 3.5?
Yes, sir.
Mary's saying in the record that she didn't see the record of the motion in the second there. I think discussion
wondered.
started before.
I was going to say, I didn't hear a second. I thought I heard a motion.
Discussion might have started before that happened.
So the question came before the motion was on
Right.
the,
Yes,
on the
sir.
table. All right, so let's go back then, 3.5. So I have a motion. Was it you, Mr. Bryant?
No, sir.
You heard it.
I
So,
thought I heard it.
well, let's just start completely over.
Okay.
And let's call for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Ms. Gardner. Is there any further discussion? Being none, let's vote again. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right. So now we're at 3.6.
No, we
Just
just
did
3.7.
Now we're at
We
7.
finished that one, and now we're on 3.7. All right, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Special Revenue Funds. Food service for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry, recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Special revenue funds, food service, the amount is $25,460,238.83.
Is there anyone here to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Evancheck,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any further discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.8, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Special Revenue Funds, Other Federal Program Funds, Fund 420 for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Other federal program for special revenue funds, Fund 420, $25,745,334.79.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here to speak to this item tonight? All right, seeing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. 3.9, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Special Revenue Funds, ARP Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief 3, ESSER 3, Fund 445 for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Special revenue funds, elementary and secondary school emergency relief 3, ESSER 3, Fund 445, in the amount of $1,891,357.29.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms.
I'll second
Gardner, second by Ms. Evancheck. Any discussion at the table?
I have one
Yes,
quick
sir.
question. So this will end ESSER moving forward? Is this the last time ESSER will be on?
Yes, sir, this
Okay.
is the last of it. This is for summer school.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep, this and the next one.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no more, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.10, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Special Revenue Funds, Other ARP Act Relief Fund 446 for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Special revenue funds, other American Rescue Plan Act relief, Fund 446, in the amount of $155,141.59.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Vancheck,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. 3.11, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Special Revenue Funds, Miscellaneous Internal Funds, Fund 490 for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Special revenue funds, miscellaneous internal funds, Fund 490, $20,403,982.22.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, let's have a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Gardner,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.12, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Debt Service Funds for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes?
Debt service funds, $26,395,849.61.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, we need to move it.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Ms. Evancheck. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. 3.13, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Capital Project Funds for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes.
Capital project funds, $162,433,394.11.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, we need a motion.
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Bryant.
Second.
Second, Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.14, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget Internal Service Funds for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes.
Internal service funds, the amount is $54,595,023.68.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, we need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Vancheck,
Second.
second by Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? Being none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.15, Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent. Mr. McInnes.
The total preliminary and tentative district summary budget is $726,858,927.23.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Gardner,
Second.
second by Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.16, Resolution 24-11, adopting the Okaloosa County School District Preliminary and Tentative Budget for fiscal year 24-25, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Mr. McInnes.
This is just the resolution that adopts the prior numbers.
No numbers?
No, sir.
All right. Anyone here to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, 3.17, public hearing on school district's 5-year capital outlay plan presented by Ms. Perry. And so, Mr. McInnes, do you have any numbers here?
No, sir.
All right. Is anyone here to speak to this item tonight?
This is just for public comment tonight, Mr. Chairman. No action by the board is required.
Okay, it says public hearing, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're asking anybody want to speak, and I don't see anyone wanting to speak, and so there's no action to be taken this evening on that particular item. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting, unless Mr. McInnes and our superintendent, there's something else that we might opt to attend to. And as I understand it, all of these documents have been posted to the school district's website. Okay. All right, colleagues, anything else?
Just to say my appreciation to Ms. Perry and her team. This is quite a lot to pull together, and I really do appreciate you doing all this. And you always present it in a very easy manner for us to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vancheck, and thank you, Ms. Perry. All right, this meeting is adjourned.